be a lecture today, and then we're going to practice a little bit and homework. So, okay, so we're going to talk about order of operations, and some of you know it as Pemdas. Let me just give you a background a little bit about this. Yes? Is this a question or a statement or?
Statement.
Yes.
Are you that? Never mind.
Let me just start. Let me just begin with a little something. Like, it's interesting. You know, when you think about all our orders of all of our operations, add, subtract, multiply, divide, exponents, right? Things like that. And think about what order you have to do them in. Why is it really that important? Dan?
Because if you do it like when you want to.
Right, it's so weird. But like if I had 8 minus 3 parentheses 2 plus 1, like two totally different people could totally follow all mathematical laws. I mean, before Pemdas was invented, right? Before order of operation was invented. They could say, okay, the first person could say, well, 8 minus 3 is 5, right? That makes sense. So 5, then parenthesis 2 plus 1, and then, let's see, 2 plus 1 is 3, so that's 5 times 3, so the answer is 15. And they didn't do anything wrong. I mean, they totally followed. Then another person could do the same thing, 8 minus 3 parenthesis 2 plus 1, and they could say, well, I'd like to do this part first. That's 8 minus 3 parenthesis 3. Oh, well, 3 times 3 is 9, so it's 8 minus 9, and they get -1. Both of them followed mathematical principles, right? They added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided. And they got radically different answers. Radically. Problem, right? When you're trying to send somebody to the moon, or to Jupiter, or when you're, whatever, you can't have two people doing the exact same thing and getting totally different answers. You'll never get anywhere, right? So at some point they started to realize, well, wait a minute, we've got to have a system that makes sense, that works every time. And so we had to decide, well, what order do you solve these problems in so that you actually get the correct answer every time, so that everybody gets the same answer, not just everybody getting 5 different answers. We don't want that. Yes, Carter.
So, what I've always been confused about this is, even though we have Pemdas, how do we know that that is, the correct order that works? How do we know it's not addition first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I think part of it is, let's see, I don't know, that's a great question. I don't really have an answer. Let me see if I can find an answer for you. I think if it were me trying to figure that out, I could use simple problems, right? And try to make sense of the simple ones and see, does this make sense? Like, I might try to create an actual scenario where that would be the correct equation. You know what I mean? Like I would create a word problem where that would be the right equation to solve it. And then I'd try to figure out which is more likely to be the answer. Do you know what I'm saying? And then I would probably follow that method. So somebody did that, is my guess. I mean, they must have, right, to get the order of operations. Even though everything here is correct, they chose to do it in a way that no longer would not be correct in our book, because we did not do the right things first. We didn't combine the things in the parentheses first. We did not do the multiply first. This is parenthesis always means multiply, so I'd have to do this next, right? And I wouldn't want to do the 8 minus 3. Subtraction happens towards the end of the whole thing, right? So this one is not correct. This one is actually correct, I believe, unless I've made a mistake on it. But I'll find out. That's a great question. I've wondered that from time to time, but I've never taken the time to just sort of figure out who actually came up with that. You know what I mean? Who actually came up with Pemdas or that idea? order of operations in general. It's amazing. Oh, it's amazing the things you can discover about life. I found out this amazing piece of information yesterday. Who invented the round table? Do you guys know? Oh, it's amazing. It's a British guy. His name is Circumference. Ah, okay. Anyways. Ha 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 ha. Okay. All right. So, why am I doing this on the video? Ah, jeez. Okay. Okay. This is a video, Gary. This is a video. So let's look at this for a second. I think everything's on here. All right. Pemdas. Pemdas. Did we actually talk about this a little bit at one point last week or 2 weeks ago? No? Okay. So parentheses. Parentheses. Exponents.
Multiply, divide, add, subtract.
Multiply. Divide. Add. Subtract. Whoops. Subtract. Right? So what does the rule say? Who can explain the rule to me? So, Lucas.
So, first you do parentheses,
Okay.
then you do exponents,
Okay.
then you do multiplication and division in order of left to right.
All right, that's the part. Do you guys know this?
Yes.
You have to do, you definitely do parentheses first. And when they say parentheses, it means you simplify what's in the parentheses, right? If you can't simplify, you just check that off. You can't do it. You got to go to the next thing. Exponents, if there's exponents, do it. But when it says multiply or divide, you do the first thing from left to right, the first thing that comes up first. If divide comes first, you do divide first, even though multiply is written first. Does that make sense? You have to do divide first, if that's the first thing from left to right. If multiply is the first thing, okay, now keep going.
And then addition and subtraction are also equal in order of left to right.
Right, so this is going to be, both of these are going to be left to right, in that order, right? And this is left to right. Okay, very good. So let's try a few. Let's do. Let me just think for a second. Why don't I say 4 minus 3 parenthesis 2 cubed
Oh,
plus 4. Okay, what would I do?
You would do it.
Okay, parentheses first. Can I simplify that?
yes.
So what is, but yes, so I have to do what's inside the parentheses, but in this case, I have a mini problem inside the parentheses. You see that?
Yeah.
The mini problem has an exponent in it. I can't just add them right now. I've got to do PEMDAS within the parentheses, right? And so the PEMDAS would be 2 times 2 times 2, right? 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2. It's never 2 cubed. I mean 2 times 3, whatever, right? It's 2 times 2 times 2. So that is 8, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to just, I like to write it directly underneath if possible, just because it makes it easier to see what I'm doing. Now what can I do? Somebody else, somebody else, somebody else. Somebody else. Tess, what would I do now? So the first thing we did is we did our 2 cubed. All right, we did inside the parentheses. Is there anything else inside the parentheses I can do?
Oh my god.
8 plus 4, which is 12, right? So suddenly I got 4 minus 3 parentheses 12. All right, now what would I do? Rika, what would I do? I'm right here. We've got, say it again? Say it again? 12 times 3, okay. 12 times 3 is what? 36. So it would be 4 minus 36, is that what you're saying? All right, now what would I do? James, what would I do?
Oh.
What would I do now?
Subtract it.
I would subtract them. What do I get?
Negative 32.
So the signs are different, right? I keep the sign of the bigger number, or the number that has the absolute the biggest absolute value, 36. The sign of that is negative. I know it's going to be negative. and then I just subtract 4 from 36, that's 32. Right? I said, doesn't matter which one you subtract, it's easier to subtract, you know, smaller from bigger, right? So that's great. So that we use order of operations to solve. Let's try another one. Is it hot in here?
Oh, it's always hot in here.
I'm boiling. I'm gonna just turn that down. The trouble with this thing is it goes on and right. Okay, so we, all right, what if I gave you something like this? 2 plus 4 minus 3 plus 6 squared. All right, what if I gave you something like that? Now this looks more complicated. And when we look at our Pemdas, it says parentheses first. What's the problem? Wait a minute, it doesn't say anything about brackets or braces, brackets. So those are brackets, right? It doesn't say anything about brackets in the Pemdas. How do I deal with the brackets, Gardner?
You do the brackets first. You do what's in the
Okay.
bracket first.
But technically, can somebody describe to me, tell me, Gardner, what are brackets?
They're like parentheses, but
That's it. That they are. They're a grouping tool that groups things together just like parentheses. In fact, technically, that's what they are. I could easily rewrite this. I could have written this like this. 4 minus 3 plus 6 parentheses squared parentheses. The problem with that, the reason why we don't often do that is because if I did enough parentheses inside the parentheses, then it gets confusing as to what I'm doing. Does that make sense? Like which parenthesis goes with which parenthesis and which is the beginning and end of which, and so does that make sense? So Jaden, what would I do?
You do the 3 plus.
Yes, you do the innermost parentheses first. So 3 plus 6. So I'm going to get rid of this for now. We're just going to rewrite this. 2 plus bracket 4 minus, what's 3 plus 6? 9 squared bracket. Now what do I do? Let's see. Addie, what would I do? What's the next thing I'd do? Yes, so I'm going to do the exponents. I'm still inside my parentheses. I'm technically still doing my parentheses, aren't I? But Addie noticed immediately that there's an exponent that I have to do. So make sure you guys are not distracting each other. I know some of you know this, but don't assume anybody else does, right? So just make sure you're not distracting. So 9 squared is what? I forgot what I was talking about. 9 squared. 9 times 9 is 81. So I'll suddenly add 2 plus 4 minus 81. All right, so Rosemary, what would I do?
So, no, it would be 4 minus 81, but because there's a plus 2, you could just say it's 81 minus 2.
Well, yeah, except that let's do what PEMDAS says. Let's just combine what's inside the parentheses first. 4 minus 81, what would that be? That's tricky, isn't it? 78? Is it
77.
77? 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, you're right. 77. 2 plus 77. And then now we'll do what Rosemary said, 79, right? Now, it's what Rosemary did was interesting.
No.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's negative, sorry. So that means it's negative 77, sorry. But, sorry.
Negative 75. What?
Sorry guys, I'm going too fast. Negative 75. 2 minus 77. Negative 75. Thank you for catching that. sorry, I got sidetracked because I was about to say something. I wasn't thinking about that. But what Rosemary did was interesting. She actually broke the PEMDAS rule, the order of operations rule, and still got the right answer, right? So sometimes it's possible to do that, right? You just have to be careful. You have to know when it's okay to break it. And if you don't, then just follow the rule. Does that make sense? Okay? In essence, what she realized, I mean, I'm going to guess what she realized, is that a lot of times in math, it's easy if you can get rid of the parentheses, you can solve a problem. And you can't solve it when there are parentheses. You've got to get rid of the parentheses. And so she might have said, what I might have said at least if I were her, is that are these parentheses needed in this particular case? They're not, because what is in front of this parenthesis right here, this bracket? A plus sign, and actually what's between the plus sign and the bracket? What? A 1,
Oh,
right? A
yeah.
hidden 1, right? Whenever there's a plus sign and then a parenthesis or a bracket or a brace, there's a hidden 1 right there. So I could actually multiply that 1 times all of this, and I would just get all of this. Do you agree with me? And by doing that, I wouldn't need my parentheses. So I could have written it as, I could have written it as 2 plus 4 minus 81. Then, once I got rid of my parentheses that way, then her idea was correct to go 2 plus 4 is 6, and then subtract 81 from 6, right? You see that? Yes, go ahead. Does that make sense? Did I confuse anybody? You can do it either way. But you'll see this part in a little while, not today. I mean, you'll see that in more situations. Now, what if I made it even harder? What if I gave you something like really hard? Ooh, yeah.
Oh, no.
All right, I'll just change the numbers. How about I give you this?
What? Extra brackets.
I want to do that.
Would you
Okay.
like to come up and do it?
So,
Oh, wow, you're doing a lot now.
so that looks scary. How many people?
No, it's fine.
It's scary, but I mean, there's more than one parenthesis, then there's the
Right.
box one, then there's inside. It's like parenthesesception.
No, it was
So let's just look at it for a second. We have parentheses. We've got parentheses in 2 different places. We have brackets in one place, and we have braces. So we have to do everything inside the innermost parentheses first. So immediately, to me, that means this parenthesis and this parenthesis. I'm gonna combine those as well first. So suddenly I've got the brace, and then 7 minus 2 is what? 5. So I've got, do I need the parentheses now? No, I don't. And then times 2 minus brace 6. What's 2 plus 3? 5. Minus 5. Brace plus 6. Now what can I do next? Basic, what would I do next?
You would probably multiply that 6 by that 5 and get 30 minus 5.
Okay, let's do that. So suddenly that's going to be 30 minus 5, 30 minus 5. So that's going to be 25. So suddenly I've got my brace, 5 times 2 minus 25, right? 25. Do I need the brace anymore?
No.
I don't need the brace anymore,
Doesn't
right?
have anything else.
And then plus 6, right? Now what? Now what do I do? Logan, what do I do now? 5 times 2 is 10, right? So I've got 10 minus 25, and then plus 6. So this is what? Negative 15. Do I need the brace?
No.
Anymore? No. Plus 6. What's negative 15 plus 6? Signs are different. I keep the sign in front of the bigger number, bigger absolute value. So it's going to be negative. I know it's going to be negative. Now I just subtract 6 from 15, and I get negative 9. Exactly. Okay. Right? Fist to 5. Are you guys understanding this? Is it making sense? Awesome. You already knew it, right? Okay, that's fine. All right, can I erase? One more.
Wait,
Come on.
Can we come up?
Are you still writing?
Yes. Yeah, I want to do one.
Wait. You know, I'm going to give you a sheet so you guys practice in just a second. But I want to show you something, one last one, which you may or may not have seen. I don't know. Can I erase now? See how we can erase it now?
Yeah.
What if I gave you what if I gave you something like that? So
It's easy. Then
a fraction is what? A fraction is a division problem. Now, the thing is, though, Pemdas, how does this work, though? Pemdas says I got to go from left to right, but I've got suddenly up and down. How do I deal with that? Jan, how would I deal with that?
It doesn't really matter which thing you solve first, either the top or the bottom. But for the top and the bottom, you still have to follow Pemdas.
Correct. So in essence, if I were going to write this in another, in a horizontal fashion, this is how I'd have to do it. If I were going to see, I just need to leave myself. 4, 2 minus 6 plus 12. I would have to, so guys listen. If I were going to write that horizontally, I would have to do it like this. These parentheses would be required now. Do you see what I mean? Because if I didn't have them, I'd only be dividing by 3. You with me? See what I'm saying? I wouldn't be subtracting, I wouldn't be dividing by the 3 times 2 minus 4. I have to have them. So in essence, what that means is my numerator, just like Jan was saying, I have to simplify using Pemdas all of my upstairs, and then I have to leave that for a bit and simplify all of my downstairs. And then I can simplify further, right? Then I can do my dividing. Does that make sense? Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So we'll get rid of that. What would I do first? Yes, Lucas.
You would take the parentheses 2 minus 6.
Okay, so suddenly it's 4, 2 minus 6 is negative 4, right? Plus 12 over 3 times 2 minus 4. What would I do now? Risa, what would you do? Okay, parentheses. So let's do multiply and parentheses, right? So that's negative 16 plus 12 over 3 times 2. I could do that now, couldn't I? Isn't that okay? Because downstairs, so it'd be 6 minus 4. So now we can simplify that. Negative 16 plus 12 is? Negative 4 over 6 minus 4 is 2. What's my final answer?
Negative 2.
Yeah, negative 2. So it's now that we've simplified it, then we can do the division at the very end. Does that make sense? You guys see that? See how that works? Okay, that's it. That's all I want to do for the lecture. Uh-oh. I must have knocked this. Bummer. Oh well. I don't know when I did that.